All right. In the meantime, I have started the meeting recording. So I think as people join, we can go ahead and get started, and we'll call roll momentarily. But again, welcome. My name is Casey Beck. I'm the Behavioral Health Program Manager at the Criminal Justice Commission. You are likely here for day 3 of the Impacts Grant Review Committee meeting, reviewing and making award decisions on the behavioral health deflection grant applications. This meeting is being recorded. It is a public meeting. We have turned the chat feature off, though, to capture all comments as part of the record. Please defer all questions to the co-chairs or myself. And unfortunately, just due to time constraints, there's no additional time for public comment today. So let's go ahead and begin taking roll. Will, do you mind taking the lead on that?
Absolutely, Casey. Co-chair Samantha Byers.
Present.
Thank you. Co-chair Ken Sanchagrin.
Present.
Thank you. Jeremiah Stromberg.
Present.
Thank you. Judge Suzanne Shanti.
Present.
Thank you. Liz Weber. Steve Gunnels.
Present.
Thank you. Eric Swallow. Chief Marsha Harnden.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Claire Hall.
Here.
Thank you. Alicia Beamer.
Present.
Thank you. Stacy Brubaker.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Greg Brigham.
Present.
Thank you. Sheriff Curtis Landers.
I'm present.
Thank you. Dr. Sharon Stanfill. RJ Navarro. Okay. Senator Gelser Bluen.
Staff is here for the senator.
Thank you. Rep. Charlie Conrad.
Here.
Thank you. Janie Gullickson. Michelle Mason. Paul Solomon.
Here.
Thank you. Carl McPherson.
Grant Hartley here, present as a proxy, non-voting member.
Thank you. That should be quorum, Casey.
Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate that. All right, so GRC members, we have 4 applications remaining today: Umatilla County, Union County, Washington County, and Yamhill County. We will go ahead and begin with Umatilla, and I will turn it over to you for discussion.
Casey.
Yes.
Casey.
Yeah.
Before we proceed through the remaining counties, I wonder if a motion would be appropriate at this time.
Yes, Steve, and sorry, I'm hearing some echo, so let me try to take care of that for you real quick. Everyone else, if you could please make sure that you are on mute. All right, Steve Gunnels, thank you again for bringing that up. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I move that we reconsider and approve the Clackamas County application at this time. I've had a lot of conversations on this proposal over the last few days, as I'm sure many of the people on this call have. And I've learned a great deal that I think was missing in our discussion of the application a few days ago. I know that Clackamas County is committed to deflection, and I believe the Clackamas County plan fits within the goals of deflection outlined in House Bill 4002. I believe District Attorney Wentworth and Love One, the provider partner, are on the call today and could perhaps provide further clarity if there are questions about the proposal, if that's appropriate. I've spoken with District Attorney Wentworth in particular about the concerns expressed in line 13 of their requested budget and the non-deflection duties of a deputy DA2. And with my motion, I would support District Attorney Wentworth's request to strike that line item from our consideration today, with the understanding that the approximately 200,000 would be set aside for Clackamas County later to apply for in the fall. And with that, I move for a vote to reconsider and approve that application.
Thanks, Steve.
Morning,
Before
second.
we hear a second, I just wanted to clarify. So line 13 in that Clackamas County budget is line 2 of personnel. That is the DDA 2 position, totaling $195,996. And the narrative provided there was that the DDA 2 position would take over existing prosecution responsibilities and caseload of the DDA 3. The DDA 2 will also be responsible for all new cases generated by the new possession charges. So just so all GRC members are clear of what particular line item that was.
This is Chief Hardy, and I second the motion.
I think some folks
Jason.
have their hands up.
Are we calling out on raised hands? How would you like to proceed?
Well, real briefly. So yeah, so we have been unexpected. We have a motion, we have a second. And so I think that now we should move into discussion. It seems that the motion maker, our committee member, Steve Gunnels, has already had had his opportunity to explain his justification for the motion. So yeah, I think now we should move into discussion of it. And I know, Jeremiah, you had your hand up first, Co-Chair Byers second, and then I believe Judge Shanti, and then Paul Solomon. I do see a hand raised by a non-committee member, and so we will be skipping over that person. We'll be restricting this to committee members for discussion. So go ahead, Jeremiah.
Quick clarification, actually, Ken. So Lena Demora is actually representing Senator Gelser-Bluin.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't recognize the name.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
While I think so discussion is open to all representatives with the proxies of those committee members, but no voting for Senator Gelser-Bluin proxy, or of course, Grant Hartley representing Carl McPherson.
Thank you for that clarification, Lena. Apologies for not realizing that. Thank you. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Thank you. Steve, I appreciate you raising the motion and recognize that it's already been seconded. Just to the committee members, I was obviously a very vocal critic of Clackamas County's application the other day as we reviewed it. I shared many of the same concerns around the limiting criteria of the population and how the deflection program was being structured. However, I also recognize that our duty this week isn't to determine the likely success of the program, but to ensure that they have the foundational structure and the finances to be able to start their program. And we have that ability to continue to ask questions and just flag areas where we will be eager to see the success in the coming year. And this body will have responsibility further down the road as it relates to the success of all of these programs and the opportunity to help engage counties if technical assistance is appropriate or change of course with their deflection. So I certainly support us reconsidering their application, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. So next, Co-Chair Sam Byers.
Thank you. So two pieces, just for clarification. I was also vocal. My piece wasn't so much on the line items, but that individuals that were part of deflection actually had to enter into a legal process prior to deflection. And that, for me, did not feel like deflection away from the legal system. It felt like a diversion, and continue to have concerns about folks who have declined treatment in prior times being excluded from deflection. My comment today is a concern that one-off conversations can happen with committee members that then bring the motion that we are asked to vote on. We do have a process. I had expected that Clackamas would submit a I can't remember, my apologies, the word, just to contest it, I guess. And that then we would have the opportunity to review based on the feedback that we gave. So I just want on the record to say I don't support a process where the whole committee is not part of conversations and then we are being asked to vote on something where we have not seen a written plan for our feedback, where we offered some clear guidance in order to support Clackamas joining us in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Ken, I think it might be worth just offering some clarification about the process. So the decision that was made back on, gosh, what day is it now? So I think it was August 1st, that first day that everyone met, was a decision to deny. And that, of course, opens a protest period along with all notices of intent to award, in which any denied county could protest the process, but they would not be able to reapply or provide any additional information or feedback for the grant review committee to consider. It would be a protest of process. Ken, do you want to speak any more to that?
Casey, you're correct. I believe what Co-Chair Byers was saying was that perhaps there would be a step after, even assuming that if there had been a protest, that there would be a reapplication opportunity. But yes, the way that you described it is correct. But I don't think that Sam was suggesting that we would then do a reconsideration during a protest either, unless there was something that was to do with process. But I think, you know, the way that you described it is completely correct. I think we should move back into the line that we've established here by folks raising their hands.
Sounds great. Lena, I see your hands raised next on behalf of Senator Gelsick-Lewin.
I am here to hold her spot. She actually just joined by phone, but she can't raise her hand, so that's my minus.
Is she on a separate line, Lena, that we should watch out for?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Go ahead.
I'm the 2115, and I apologize. I think I explained the circumstances in the prior letter, but I've jumped out of another meeting, and I just appreciate all the time everyone has put into this. I think this is a very significant and important issue. I know I have received a tremendous number of communications over the last several days, and I think all of the discussions are worthy of merit by the entire committee. I also think it's really important that the committee gets through the first round of grants. We've got counties that have not yet had the opportunity to be considered, and given the significance of these issues, I hope that if there is a reconsideration, that it would be not today, but soon, whether that's through a separate process of the protest and then a reapplication or an opportunity for a conversation to provide feedback about adjustments, but within a timeline, obviously, that wouldn't delay appropriate access to funding if that's where things land. But I think that is just the request that I would have, and also creating an opportunity for many voices to be able to weigh in through a more public informal process. And I certainly would really love the opportunity to be part of that, or make sure that there is someone from the Senate that's able to be part of that. I'm unfortunately triple scheduled again today, and also don't feel like it's appropriate, since I wasn't there in the first set of considerations for the other applications, to add in at the end. But long story short, I really appreciate all the thought that's gone into this. I've reviewed all the notes. I do think this is an important issue that's worthy of more discussion. I think it deserves a dedicated space for that discussion on a timely basis. And I also think it's important to get through the first round of applications, so that each county that has put in their application has the opportunity to be on the appropriate timeline, since it's already taken longer than we anticipated. But that's it. Thanks for letting me chime in so quickly.
Thank you, Senator. I very much appreciate that. I also want to make sure that we get through all of the applications today, and unless my co-chair has an objection, I think consistent with Robert's rules, except for maybe the folks who already spoke, since I didn't say this already, we should hold ourselves to one opportunity to speak on the merits of the motion, and then we can take a vote on it. and we can go from there. That way we can ensure that we have appropriate time for our remaining 4 counties that need to be considered. So apologies for the interruption. Now it looks like it's Grant's turn.
Thank you, Ken. And so I just want to, again, I'm a non-voting member. I'm here as a proxy for an individual who would be a voting member, but is out of the country. And so I do want to say that I think procedurally this is fairly concerning. The original decision to reject the application had very robust discussion with plenty of grant review committee members chiming in. Many of those committee members were not able to make this subsequent meeting. And so by doing a motion for reconsideration without them present, it's essentially negating their opinion on this issue. And that is concerning. I also, having reviewed the grant administration guide, I'm not sure that I necessarily see an avenue for reconsideration. And so I'm not sure if that's something you can address after I've finished my other comments, Ken, but procedurally, how is this authorized, and how do we deal with the fact that individuals have already voted on this who are not present? I will say my concerns, I appreciate the concession of Mr. Wentworth in striking that line item. I think that the application was very system heavy, which was one of my concerns that I raised. However, I still have a lot of other concerns, one of which was raised by Co-Chair Byers, which is that this still remains a diversionary process where an individual is cited to court. There is no warm handoff. At court, they then meet with a representative from the district attorney's office, which is going to implicate constitutional issues for that individual, and then they receive an offer. That is a diversionary process. And again, I want to emphasize, I know there's been discussion on this, but we have a definition of deflection, and that definition is informed, in my opinion, by the section before it, which says that deflection can occur before or after arrest, but before referral to a district attorney. It is one thing if a district attorney is merely holding those charges in abeyance and not making decisions. It's a whole nother if they are using their discretion to determine who is eligible, who is not, and accept those people in. At that point, that case has entered the system, and we are no longer meeting the definition. And even if you exclude that portion of the definition, which I'm not sure how you do, since that is what the legislature intended. That is where the legislature wanted deflection to occur. Otherwise, they would not have stated that. But even if you do that, the definition, the term community pathways in the definition of deflection program has to mean something. And it has to be more than what we are already doing in diversionary courts, which is citing people to court, entering an agreement with the DA, and then mandatory treatment or a consequence. And that is really what the Clackamas County program does. And that is exactly what diversion courts do. And that's exactly what the conditional discharge, also set up in 4002, does. And so, again, deflection was intended to be deflecting people out of the system. And the Clackamas plan pulls people into the system and then diverts them out. It is a diversionary program. I don't believe that it meets the definition of deflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Up next, we have Paul Solomon, followed by Alicia Beamer and Dr. Brigham. And I just saw Rep. Conrad's hand go up as well. So Paul, over to you.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I think Senator Gelser-Bluin kind of articulated my thoughts. I am concerned about our ability to get through the applications that we have in front of us. And I think we need to review those first before we continue further discussion on this matter.
Thanks. Alicia, you're next.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So I actually just have questions just in case this goes to vote for me to understand. So the letter that we got from the mayor and all that came out, is that considered additional information to this packet, or are we only looking at what was sent, what we have before us right now?
That's a great question, Alicia. I mean, I think that our decision, we need to focus on the information that we have in the application.
Okay.
I do know that we also have, as has been mentioned, some folks from Clackamas County here, and at least I would be willing, I'm not sure if my co-chair would be, to allow us to have them provide us information, given that they're present. But I think that would be the additional consideration that we could, that way we could all hear and we could question and we could undertake that as a consideration. I circulated that letter this morning because I thought it would be bad form of me not to provide a letter that was addressed to Casey and to the committee. So that's why that was sent out this morning.
Okay, and then thank you, that helps. And then my other question is, in rereading the application, in some ways it seems like they're still planning, which I didn't catch when we were initially looking at this, because they've got where I have, and I'm not an expert in this, I run a hospital, so I'm not in the criminal justice system, but where I was looking at this is really the language about connecting the individual to other programs, and also understanding that having it go through the DA first is not maybe connecting somebody to the programs. And in looking at their application, it really does indicate they're going to be connected to the DA first before services can be provided. However, on their application, it does talk about where they're looking at developing processes for referring to the burn network, and then also assigning to a peer with the candidate, but they're hoping to have that in place 11/1. And so it doesn't seem like some of that's been defined well, and that they're still working through that. And I know as we worked through our application processes, we were kind of looking at our other applications that way in some ways. So I just wanted to call that out as I was looking at this again. I do agree, though, I think with Paul that and others, that maybe having this as a conversation separate so that we can make a good decision would be my recommendation as well, rather than voting on it today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Brigham, you are next.
Yeah, I'll be brief as well. So as we've gone through the process, it seems to me that we reviewed this application early on, even regardless of Clackamas's reaching out to members and sending additional information. I had planned to raise this issue. I don't feel our definition has been tight or consistent enough to justify the decision we made earlier on. So I think it's a brand new program. We've been wrestling with exactly how to evaluate these projects. And, you know, I had thought by the end of the process, I would have voted differently had all that occurred and Clackamas been reviewed later. So, you know, I think we would want to give them the feedback that we've had, that, you know, we're concerned that this may not meet a evolving definition of deflection, and that, you know, we've given that kind of feedback to multiple grantees. So I plan to vote in favor of approving this application if we decide to go to a vote. I also agree that we should probably bump it to the end of the meeting so we get through the regular review of all the pending applications.
Thanks for your comments, Dr. Brigham. Representative Conrad, your hand is next.
Thank you, Casey. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. A couple quick things. I appreciate the motion. I appreciate at least the opportunity to have a discussion about the reconsideration. The things that stand out to me again is that this is a formula grant. It's not a competitive grant. And so if they meet the basic criteria, then they get the money. And to me, that's very important. The definition is very important. The definition for deflection all throughout is consistent. And it's just a collaborative program, which is what this is. It assists people with SUD, which is what it does. And it creates the pathway to recovery, support, housing, and services. Broad definition of deflection. And in that definition, there is nothing with timeline, and there's nothing with process points. And to Grant's point, and it's to read throughout the whole bill what is said, it is important to consider that. But again, it's also important to consider that the word encourage is before everything else in that top section of, I think it's section 35. So taking all that into consideration, a formula grant, they meet the definition. They should be getting the money, in my opinion. I absolutely support Clackamas. I see this as an R&D process. This is the first time it's gone through, and all the rest of the discussion and the points that people have brought up, I think are important to carry forward as the process is evaluated. But this is a good discussion to have, and I think it's a good thing to reconsider at, and hopefully the voting members will support Clackamas. Thank you.
Thanks. Ken, back to you.
So I believe that I'd like at this point to actually ask if there are any other impacts GRC members who would like to have input on this. I completely agree with Paul and with Dr. Brigham that we don't want to delay our other applications. But aside from Judge Shanti, who I'm prepared to recognize now, I think that I have one or two quick things to say, and I'll say them after Judge Shanti. But I think we could vote, and then we can get to those other applications, and then we can hopefully conclude our business. Judge Shanti, please go ahead. Judge Shanti, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a lot to say and ask about this application, but I'm more concerned about this process. We've just spent a half an hour on an hour and a half, and we've got 4 applicants. And I just think that this was not the way to go. I was totally open to hearing about Clackamas County if we could get our work done. So I'm going to vote no, because I don't think this is the appropriate process, not necessarily because I would vote no if we had the discussion that I would like to have, and if I could say the things I wanted to say and get the information I wanted to get. So that's all I have to say.
Well, this is the point where I'm going to show my lack of knowledge of Robert's rules, and would love to have anybody clarify for me who may know them better. But I mean, it does seem that I was going to call for a vote, but we also have a number of folks who would prefer to do our other business first and to leave this for the end. I'm not sure, as chair, can we table a motion till the end of the meeting? Chief Harnden, I'm not sure if you have that knowledge.
Yeah, I think we have to vote to table it. I don't think we can just leave a motion in a second.
That's what I thought. I didn't think we could just leave it hanging there.
Does anybody else? Point of order. The motion is to reopen the conversation. You, as the chair, can decide when that conversation will occur in the course of this meeting. You can say, allow us to vote. The consideration is only to have the conversation. I know many launched into their arguments for and against, but the motion on the table is merely to reopen a conversation.
And thank you, Jeremiah. I think that was the clarification that following this discussion that I didn't realize. So if the motion is to reopen the conversation, then sorry, go ahead, Casey.
Yeah,
or is that not the wording?
I fear, so again, apologies, pregnancy brain, but I fear that Steve may have included the word to also approve, to reopen and to approve. So I just want to make sure that's clear. That was part of the motion. And unfortunately, we're not able to go back in time. At this moment, this is recorded, but maybe we could have,
thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, Steve, restate the motion. I'm not sure if that's a possibility.
I mean, I have to admit, I thought that's what I heard the first time, but yeah, it sounds like that's what we had.
I did move to reconsider and approve the Clackamas County application.
Okay.
Shall we proceed with the vote for that motion since it was seconded?
So I will say, I think according to Robert's rules, I believe that you have to have voted for the prevailing side in order to make a motion for reconsideration. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that is Robert's rules. So just want to throw that out there, even though, again, non-voting member.
And I'm sorry, Representative, I see that your hand is raised. If you have clarification on Robert's rules for us, then I would be more than happy to hear that. But I think otherwise, as a non member, we'll have to keep the discussion to members.
That's what I was going to offer, was clarification on Robert's rules. So as a eight-year mayor, Grant is correct. You have to have been on the prevailing side of a vote to offer, to ask for reconsideration.
Thank you, Representative. Well, it seems that we have spent a half an hour discussing something that we could not entertain then. So I guess, Casey, we'll have to move into discussion of the other applications.
All right, give me one moment to get this screen up. All right, GRC members, Umatilla County is up for discussion.
I would just kick things off to say that if Umatilla County's application seemed familiar, we know that we've seen suggestions similar to theirs before, given that they share a, I forget if it's a CCO or just a their community provider together. So I don't have any strong concerns with Umatilla County. Go ahead, Sam.
Co-chair Byers.
I would concur with my co-chair, and thank you.
Go ahead, Grant.
Thank you. Yeah, the only thing I would say, I think for the other ones that were similar like this, the feedback was to provide additional details around eligibility, since they sort of use the presumptively eligible language, and so it appears there's other criteria that is not in the application. And then as well as with the success, I believe that we asked for additional clarification on that. So I would just ask that the feedback essentially match the applications that we've already reviewed that are similar.
Thank you, Grant. Suzanne. Or Judge Shanti, sorry.
That's all right. I am Suzanne. I love that. I think it's great that they've got the behavioral health people as the coordinator, and I support this application. Later, if we ever have time, I think we could have another meeting, just our committee, to talk about and give direction to staff about what we'd like to reach out to the various applicants that are getting the money, and you know, to help get some consistency of the kind of data we're going to get back and things like that. But for right now, I agree that this is similar to what we've already approved.
Thanks, Judge Shanti. Before we move to Janie, I do see your hand up, Janie. I think that sounds like a great idea. I think you would have an opportunity to do so absolutely before quarterly reporting or the semi-annual progress report, that a lot of these opportunities for programmatic check-in had already been established. I do not believe that we would have time or capacity to capture some like robust stuff before handing over the contracting process to the counties that have been approved. So just wanted to clarify that, Judge Shanti. Janie.
Thank you, Casey. Just carrying over, since it's been a little time, the request or recommendation for technical assistance for clarity and consistency with the navigator/peer role. Thank you.
And Dr. Brigham?
A motion to approve the application.
I completely agree, Dr. Brigham. I think we should call this one for a vote.
All right. So the decision before you now is whether or not you approve the application from Umatilla County. Is there any further discussion before we actually move in to the voting process? Hearing
Let's proceed
none.
to the voice vote. Yeah.
Okay, so first, are there any abstentions from this vote on Umatilla County from the GRC members? Okay, those in favor of approving the Umatilla County application, with the feedback provided, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. Umatilla County, the application passes, and staff will be sure to relay the feedback that was provided. Up next is Union County. Up for discussion.
Jeremiah, go ahead.
I would just like to note, I certainly appreciate the broad population that's eligible for their program, not limited by past behavior or convictions. They're allowing individuals who are on supervision if this is the appropriate pathway. And so I certainly appreciate the approach they're taking and would move to approve their application.
Is there further discussion from the members? I think I'd be willing to move. Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, I will say the language in this application concerns me. I believe there is a portion in it where refers to the ability to confer with counsel and have a defense attorney. Again, that is truly system-based. That's not community-based. That's not deflection. And again, I think it's important to remind that, you know, when we're looking at these, you know, it is, I think the CJC guideline book says that decisions and recommendations will focus on the application's adherence to the goals, priorities, or preferences outlined by the legislation. And so again, in the legislation and in the fiscal impact statements that supported it, there was a lot of discussion around how these deflection programs will not require defense counsel because they will not be involved in the system. I'm worried about the language here because they are talking about providing discovery. Defense attorneys going to confer with their client in order to determine whether or not an offer of deflection or deferred prosecution will be accepted. And again, deferred prosecution is similar, is basically conditional discharge. And so I did want to raise those concerns. I think that this is, you know, there's a lot of good things about this application. I really appreciated the eligibility. I do think that there probably needs to be more details regarding what constitutes success. But I'm very concerned by the process and the system involvement in that process.
Co-Chair Sam Byers.
Thank you. I think just following up on Grant's piece there, I am curious as to why the assessment information would go to defense attorney for discovery and how that would work with 42 CFR, assuming that that means the individual would have to sign a release to authorize that. So that would be a significant point of concern, though I do appreciate this application and the partnerships that are a part of it.
Thank you, Sam. I think that would be an important piece of clarification that we could request from the county. Certainly, if it doesn't conform with federal regulations, that would be problematic.
Is there any further discussion from GRC members? All right, hearing and seeing none, shall we proceed to a voice vote then? Yeah, seeing
Please,
some
go ahead.
nods. All right, so the decision before you now is whether or not you approve the application from Union County. In terms of feedback, Grant Review Committee, we have some bits, you know, from Co-Chair Byers, regards to, you know, assessment and whether or not, you know, that complies with federal regulations? Do we also want to add in the more clarification on what success is, and maybe getting some further explanation from the county on, what it means to confer with that defense attorney for that offer of deflection? Is there any other pieces of feedback that this committee would like to capture for the county at this time before we move?
Janie's comment on, or I'm sorry, that was from the previous one for Piers. Sorry.
All right. Then are there any abstentions from the decision on Union County? Right, hearing and seeing none. So the decision before you now is whether or not you approve the application from Union County with the feedback specified. All those in favor of approving this application, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. All right, the application is approved and staff will be sure to relay that feedback to the county. Next up is Washington County. Up for discussion. Oh, Janie, I see your hand.
Hi, yes, I just have a conflict of interest question. And I'm part of the work group that was developing this. And so does that mean I have a conflict of interest?
Thanks, Janie. So actual or potential conflicts of interest occur when a public official participates in an action that could result in financial benefit or loss to that individual, the official's relatives, or the official's business. Does that affect you in this particular case?
No, I think if Peer Services went out to an RFP, MHAO, of which I also represent, would apply, but that isn't a guarantee of funding. So I just wanted to, that, and if that excludes me, I'm hoping I can be part of the discussion if there's questions, and if I have to abstain from a vote, I'm willing.
I don't believe that excludes you, Janie. I think practice at the commission in the past is, clearly it's up to you if you would like to abstain or to declare a conflict, or we have had practice in the past where simply stating what that potential, even if it's not a true conflict of interest, what you worry about may be a conflict of interest, putting that on the record has also been sufficient. But I think when it comes to voting, it's up to you if you want to abstain or not. But Casey did a great job of restating the actual conflict language.
Okay, thank you. Then I just would officially declare just maybe even potential or perceived. And I'd like to.
I think perceived is a great way of putting it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Go ahead, Paul.
I have a lot of concerns about this application. And I know some of them may be allowable uses, like with the funding, and I'll get to that in a minute, but they have very rigid criteria for eligibility. Frankly, I would not be eligible for this program because of a conviction 34 years ago for a robbery in the second degree charge. I think that's problematic. In C6, when they're asked about their responsive, trauma-informed, and evidence-based use in the program, they don't really address where the evidence base is for their programs. In C8, they're asked, will law enforcement or first responders make first contact? And they answered yes. So is it law enforcement or first responders? I think there needs to be some clarification there. And then as it relates to the budget, a full 80+% of their budget is going to law enforcement. They have 2 program coordinators, a DDA-4 that is costing $283,000 a year for misdemeanor charges. I know that these are allowable expenses, but I also think if vehicles were allowable and someone came to us and wanted to buy a Rolls Royce, we probably would have concerns about that. And I feel like that's what they're asking us for here. And I just have a lot of concerns about how deeply weighted this is with law enforcement, especially given some of the applications we've seen in our rural counties where they're leveraging law enforcement support and putting really almost all of their money into the community-based solutions. So I'm not sure, where they're going to be deflecting people. And I know they have existing programs in Washington County, but it does give me quite a bit of concern how much of this money is going to law enforcement.
Thanks, Paul. One quick clarification I'd love to add for the group. For that particular question, C8, as part of your deflection program, will law enforcement or first responders make the first contact? We did intend that to be very broad. So we weren't specifically looking for, is it going to be one or the other? It was just, is this a point of intercept you're considering as part of your program?
Great.
And Casey, I was just going to ask a point of clarification on that as well. Were they given is that a full open text field for the yes, or was that actually just a select one, like yes or no? How is that actually set up?
So if anyone selected yes, they were prompted to provide an explanation, and they did provide an explanation. So that
I just wanted to make sure that there was
8A.
even an opportunity to provide more than just the yes or no, given how the application was constructed.
I did not see where they provided an explanation. All I saw was yes.
Yeah, so C8, their answer is yes, and then in 8A, please describe this process. They're given a 75 word limit, which is pretty slim. But do you find it now, Paul?
Yeah, my bad.
Okay.
Thanks, Casey. I just didn't want to fault anybody for literally following the form that we had set up, as opposed, it didn't want to imply what that answer meant without knowing how it was constructed. Thank you. And now, sorry, Sam, for talking over you. Why don't you go ahead?
No problem. I appreciate the discussion. So I first want to say I really appreciate the continuous efforts of outreach in this particular model. It happens throughout the entire phase, both first contact all the way through to even somebody potentially not following through on their referral and finding themselves through a legal process where the peers and deflection still become an opportunity. My concern is along with Paul, I'm unclear who qualifies for this program based on the eligibility. I think that while some of the language about who would be ineligible is I think when you see it written the way it is, and this is not to say that this was intentional, but words like domestic violence, child abuse, or sex crimes, violent felonies, it generalizes in a way that doesn't really speak to what we know about individuals who are using and some of the what's regarded as criminal activity that can potentially happen that wouldn't fall into the categories that they're potentially describing. So I think definitely a deflection model. I'm just not sure who can enter it, how they get people into it based on the eligibility. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Let's see, Grant Hartley, I see you are up next, followed by Judge Shanti and Steve Gunnels.
Great, thank you. I share a lot of the concerns, and I sort of want to start because I have been emphasizing again the definitions of deflection and section 36, where it talks about before or after citation, but before referral to district attorney. And to Representative Conrad's point, which I wasn't able to respond to last time, it does say encourage. However, that encourage language is presumably because counties can opt into this or opt out. However, it is clearly placing the deflection program in the process, which is before referral to district attorney. And that is really my concern with this program as well, is that it is very system heavy. As I believe Paul said, 84% of their budget is going to personnel in the DA's office, probation, and law enforcement. The definition of deflection is community-based pathways. there, to only have 16% of your budget dedicated to those community-based pathways, is very concerning. And I keep hearing individuals be like, well, if it's an allowable expense, we have to approve it. And again, having read the guide on grant administration, CJC's guide, it does not seem that is the case. We want to make sure that the applications adheres to the goals, priorities, and preferences outlined by the legislation. So again, I do think that there is leeway for this body, and if not, that's very concerning, because we are essentially giving blank checks to counties for anything that they can at all say is tied to deflection. And so, in my opinion, again, we are having a system where individuals are cited to appear at arraignments. That is the normal process that we take in criminal cases. And then as they're apparently in deflection, they're actually setting over arraignments. And so you have an ongoing court case. Again, the right to counsel, other constitutional rights are going to be implicated when you have individuals placed on an arraignment docket. And I think, one of the indications of, I think, Washington County's outlook for this program, a clear indicator is the fact that they've dedicated $40,000 of their budget to apprehension of FTAs, because that is what is going to result in this program. While their application mentions that they are exploring a pilot to do, sort of the warm handoff, I'm not sure how that's going to work, since it requires DA review in order to determine eligibility. And if an officer can't determine eligibility in the field, how are they going to know whether to dispatch peer navigator? How is that peer navigator going to be able to explain deflection if they don't even know if that individual is eligible for deflection? I think that there are a lot of concerns. I think, we talked a lot about the Marion County LEAD program and, how long it's been around. And one thing that Paige Clarkson, the district attorney there, says very frequently, in fact, it was on one of her slides at the symposium, is that it is the DA's role in deflection to stay out of the way. And that is not what is occurring here. This is a DA-led and DA-driven program, which is contrary to the legislative intent around, or frankly, contrary to what 4002 intended for these deflection programs. I also do think it's important to note that, the partners that are listed here, there was no defense attorney involved in these discussions. And while that has been the case for many jurisdictions, it is worth noting that my office, in April, when this started, we reached out to be involved, and we've reached out several times after that to be involved, and we have not been brought into this discussion. And these concerns about constitutional rights of individuals and meeting the definition of deflection could have been had in those discussions had they decided to involve the defense bar. So again, I am not a voting member. If I were, I would be rejecting this application, or frankly striking nearly all of the budgetary items in it. And I hope that people will really consider the fact that the legislature was intending to create something in the community, not simply replicate drug courts earlier in the process, which is essentially what this program is doing. And so again, I would ask that we either vote against this or strike down items from the budget. Thank you.
Judge Shanti, your hand is raised next.
Thank you. So I had the same concerns that have already been voiced about this application. I have a broader concern that I think maybe it was Dr. Brubaker raised, which is I fear we haven't been consistent in our application of what the purpose of this is, and if it's deflection as it's traditionally known, or if it's some kind of combination of deflection and diversion, and all of that. And I wish that we maybe would have had time to have the discussion at the outset about these types of issues. So at least we would all be rowing in the same direction. So I don't know what we can do about that now, but I think it's important for all the applicants that we be consistent. And so if we let some come in because they're a deflection, more heavy deflection program, but others we say, oh no, you're not, you have to be deflection, you can't be diversion. That's a problem for me, and I wish that didn't occur. With respect to this application, saying I agree with all the stuff that other people said, in particular, the narrow eligibility criteria. I would wonder what their expectation is. How many are they going to actually have that would meet these criteria? I know it's a big county. I come from Lane County. That's a big county as well. And I've been a treatment court judge for a number of years. And my prediction is this is going to be very small population that would actually qualify for this. Now, there might be more people that go through the system that don't qualify. So someone might touch the file, if you will, but actually qualifying just on their entrance is a small amount. And then I look at compared to what I believe will be a small population that will actually be benefited from this program, I look at this overhead, and it's really stunning to me. And I don't understand, and this is as you guys have heard, I've had this about other applications, even my own Lane County application, which I've supported because of the components there, but some of the cost line items are problematic. So there's a lieutenant that's supposed to be, it looks to me like 100% of this lieutenant's time she will spend on this program. I really, reaching out to other law enforcement, I just so doubt that that's actually going to happen, that 100% of this lieutenant's time, nothing else, is going to be on this. There's 2 program coordinators. I can't for the life of me figure out why. Multnomah County has 1 program counter, the biggest county in the state, and they're asking for $175,000 for that. And yet here's Washington County, asking for 213 and 100 and something else. I mean, it's just, I don't get it. And I don't think it's right to just, I don't agree with the person or the people that think that this is a formula grant, and so we just approve anything. The DA4, so why on a misdemeanor you need a DA4 beats me. But here's a question that I have. Can we impose something on not just this one, but other ones? Like, I would like to see timesheets. I would like to see, what are you actually, is this if you're saying that you've got a 0.75 FTE, that's 30 hours a week. So that to me means if you get the money for 30 hours a week on this deflection program, then the person should actually be working 30 hours a week on the deflection program. So the only way you can measure that is if they're keeping timesheets and they're saying what they're doing, so we can see. And I, I'm not trying to be punitive here, but I don't think the legislature intended this to be a backdoor way to fund other positions. So I would want to strike the DA4 position, or reduce the FTEs on this. I don't know really exactly how to do it, but I feel very uncomfortable voting for a program that is so administrative heavy, when it's, in particular, the criteria that they're using to get into the program seems to be so limiting. They don't connect the dots. Now, unfortunately, maybe Janie knows, maybe there's been discussion in your groups and you can say, oh no, they've done this before, or they've had something similar, and we think they're going to be serving 1,000 people a month or whatever it is. Maybe, we can't get that information, and perhaps that would have been a good question to ask on the application. But I do have I know it's a line item concern, but overall I have that, and I would maybe more if we had some amendments, like, first of all, that there has to be timesheets kept. and for all of these positions, so we can understand what they are actually doing and how much time they are actually spending on it, on that. And not just for this county, but for all of the counties, of course. But this county brings up that issue to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Judge Shanti. Okay, looks like we've got a line of hands. I've seen some shifting around too, but according to my records, it was Steve Gunnels who was up next.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that the community, the program decided that it wanted a deputy DA4, an experienced prosecutor, to review these potential cases in order to screen out those cases where there was some, a question about whether it was a good search or whether the case was prosecutable in the end, because they don't want to be taking those cases. If it was a bad search that led to a citation and a referral, they want to screen out those so that those people aren't, going through this process when they're actually facing no jeopardy, because the DA's office won't charge it in the long run anyway. And so that's the reason for that position. And having a deputy DA is allowable under the statute and under our process. This plan, I think this is a really inclusive plan in the sense that it attempts to get people deflected out of the criminal justice system for the maximum period of time. It just doesn't stop trying to deflect people out. And so I think the criticisms of criminal justice system involvement are misplaced, where really what they're doing is they're saying, we don't want you in the courtroom, we don't want you convicted, we want you deflected out at many stages along the way. And so I think those critiques aren't, they don't really fit this application. And the questions that we've raised, I think, can be addressed to the county, in a follow-up or a subsequent discussion. If we have concerns about how the proposal is running, I think they can address those questions.
Thank you, Steve. According to Teams, looks like Jeremiah Stromberg's up next.
Thank you, Casey. I too appreciated the broad array of community partners involved in their process and the development of their program. I appreciated the level of detail they provided in the different steps that would occur for an individual. I think one of our struggles has been the more detail a county provides, the more we're able to scrutinize. We have approved some applications where they're dreaming of ideas that we know maybe don't quite fit, but we went ahead and moved forward anyway. So that consistency is really important here. I've been very vocal about limited criteria as to who's eligible. That's come up from a number of folks on this application. However, it's the exact same language that at least 4 or 5 other counties used as well, and we did approve with that limited criteria. We recognize that some of these programs may struggle to have participants. Also aware, based on statements made by different counties, Multnomah, for example, currently has broader criteria, and yet the DA-elect has publicly said that he will move to only one opportunity at deflection, and then you'll be done. Washington County has put no such limits in place as to being able to come back through the program. I think it's also very important on this budgetary issue that we not look at these funds in a vacuum. These are not the only monies going to support substance abuse, treatment, peer navigators. We did not ask a county to provide how much in-kind money, how much in federal grants, where their Measure 110 monies are going, which we know were designed to be implemented specifically for these same programs. And at some point, I hope will continue or will start to be administered by OHA and others, so that we can actually see that this is just one piece of a budgetary line amidst a broad array of funding options that are coming into the county. Washington County is not building an entire program and all services on $1.5 million. And given the number of partners they had involved in the process, they clearly supported this plan, that this is where the positions needed to be: coordination and expansion within their DA's office and some into their peer services, but that these other programs didn't need this money to be able to serve the population that they're going to have coming through. So we can't just view it in a vacuum. We have to respect the fact that they have other funding streams. And if their community partners didn't say, no way, we're not going to be a part of something where we don't have capacity and you have it all at the DA's end, then this application wouldn't have made it out of the county and would have made it forward. So I think we just need to think with a broader lens around how funding is actually being utilized within the county. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Janie, you're up next, followed by Dr. Brigham and then Sheriff Landers.
Thanks, Casey. I appreciate going after Jeremiah and his inclusion of other funds that will support the work. And that, I believe, will be true for every county that applied, that also has burn members willing to expand their receiving of referrals and or collaboration to see deflection work. And my participation in the work group doesn't mean that I fully understand 100% what goes on in budgeting for governmental positions. So I just want to say that. I wanted to speak to the pilot, which is, as even the DA Barton has shared, would be the gold standard. And that is even before we're at intercept zero on the SIM model, where we don't need to know if someone qualifies for deflection or not, because that's response by peer outreach workers to connect with someone who's had interaction with law enforcement is an offer of support, whether they qualify for deflection or not. The support's there and will continue. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification, that that was added as a gold standard that they would love to see throughout the county, but that is just not possible. And that pilot is not being asked to be funded through these dollars. It is burn supported as separate and distinct and part of, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Jeannie. Dr. Brigham.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I think our process has developed into providing feedback to these applicants on issues that we think may not be completely aligned with the goals or that could be improved. So I would suggest that when we vote, we try to capture as much of this discussion and feedback as we can to ensure that we have a concern, that we communicate that we have a concern that there won't be enough people eligible for this program to meet the goals, first of all, and second of all, to justify the resources that are requested. So if they could revisit their inclusion criteria and understand that we would be watching to see and interested to see if there's actually enough capacity going on to justify the amount of DA effort and so on that's been put into the application. And then otherwise, I would suggest we call the question.
Thanks for your comments, Dr. Brigham. Sheriff Landers.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of things, and I think I'm going to reiterate something that it wasn't really for us to decide if a county's program was going to be something we thought it would work, because again, as the legislators created this bill, initially they wanted something that they thought would be working across the state, that was going to be a one size fits all, but that's just not the way it is. And for us to really get that critical in what Washington County was trying to do in their grant application, well, yet to be seen. And I think that I probably like what has happened with the JRI, the Justice Reinvestment, that as that has gone on, it has basically, counties have been put on notice that if you're not producing those results with the funding you are receiving, then you need to do something different. And I think given that this is the first round of funding that I hope will continue, that we need to look at these counties and say, okay, try this program. We'll see if it works. They may have found something that will. I also want to point out, I think, and again, I'm not an attorney, but in the bill, it has been pointed out that law enforcement is encouraged to, in lieu of citation or arrest, but before referral to the district attorney. But in line 2 of section 36, it says district attorneys in the state are encouraged to divert for assessment, treatment, and other services in lieu of conviction, which I think this meets because they are actually looking at it. They're even holding arraignment over. They're looking at this in lieu of conviction. But again, I'm trying not to get into pointing out what I believe they're trying to do, but also just kind of to counter what has been said, that there are several off-ramps in this bill for an individual to be deflected or diverted. And again, I know that it turned from diversion to deflection during that legislative process. The pilot program we're looking at a King County, that the lead in Marion County, the D is diversion, even though that is what I think we're looking at as deflection at this point. Deflection, diversion, I think a lot of people, I think we could agree or disagree, has very similar terms in this. So I think we need to look at it again. This is very similar to what we did with Clackamas, but I'm in support of their application. I'm going to be in support of this application, that it meets the eligibility, and we should vote in support of it.
Chief Harden?
Mostly what I have to say is ditto to Sheriff Landers. He stole my thunder there. Kudos to the CJC staff in trying to interpret it, the intent behind this law change. But having the first or the advantage of being in 2 counties, Benton and Lynn County, my city falls in both, and seeing the different approaches and really taking the lens of what might work in Lynn may not work in Benton, and vice versa. But TJC is outlined some criteria in the applications, and again, I would take the stance of we have to be careful not to get too far in the weeds on what we think will work and not work, and give them a chance to get something workable off the ground. Getting something up and going is a good start, because we're kind of starting something from the very beginning. So kudos to the CJC staff for trying to put some criteria around this, but again, I would not get too deep into the weeds.
Ken, you're up next. I do see Paul's hand is up again, but Paul did provide comment at the very beginning of this conversation, and also wanted to give a time check of 17 minutes until 9:30.
Right, and so I think that what I was going to do is call the question, but I was going to do it by stating 2 things related to our vote. The first is just a reminder for everyone on the committee and on the call that grantees will be reporting data on entry and success to the CJC. And so this committee will be able to see if, as concerns have been raised, the population entering into the group is too small, or I mean, into the program is too small. And and while it's not been mentioned for Washington, but for others, if there is concerns about requirements being too stringent for success, if those are too narrow. But I would support, as we go through, and I would make part of this motion for feedback, that we express our concerns about the heavy administrative costs for the county, and that as Judge Shanti suggested, that we as CJC staff solicit greater detailed information on the role of coordinators and other positions, which would then help this committee define the appropriate level of investment for counties in the future going forward for those types of roles. And with that being said, given that I think that everyone on the committee has had a chance to voice their thoughts, I think that we need to vote on this in the interest of time.
Point of order.
Yes, Paul.
So what is the process of requesting line items to be struck from the budget? Because that will have an impact on my vote.
I think that similar to what we tried to take a 2-step process, I think, with a couple of the counties where we had items that were under consideration. I guess I didn't state it quite super clearly just a moment ago, but what my motion was to approve in whole, but with the feedback that I provided. I think if we vote that motion down, then we could entertain a motion that would include striking certain positions or expenses.
Okay.
Oh, Casey, you're muted. I see your mouth moving.
Thanks, Ken. I think we should call roll on this one, just because I'm not sure exactly where everyone stands. I guess co-chair Byers and Sandgren, is that okay?
I would just say real quick, just in the interest of process, we've kind of shaded in and out of Robert's rules. I don't know if for the record or for appropriateness, given that I made the motion that we're about to vote on, if someone needs to second that, and I'm not sure if anybody would, but I'd like to give them the opportunity. That the motion is to approve in whole, but with feedback regarding our concerns for the costs for administrative and personnel, but then also that we will be soliciting feedback on the actual role that those personnel are taking in the grant.
Second, the motion is correct.
If you could call the roll, please, Casey.
All right, first, are there any abstentions officially from Washington County? Okay. Will, could you please assist me with calling a roll?
Absolutely, Casey. Co-chair Sam Byers.
Yes.
Co-chair Ken Sanchagrin.
Yes.
Judge Shanti.
Yes, with a lot of reservations, and I would like it to be the feedback to include these timesheets because this is so heavy in administration. And not just that they would like, we wanted more definition of what they're doing, but I really want to see how they're spending their time. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Jeremiah Stromberg.
Yes.
Liz Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. Steve Gunnels.
Yes.
Thank you. Eric Swallow.
Yes.
Thank you. Chief Harnden.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall.
Yes.
Thank you. Alicia Beamer.
Yes.
Thank you. Stacy Brubaker.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Brigham.
Yes.
Thank you. Sheriff Landers.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Stanfield. Janie Gullickson.
Yes.
Thank you. RJ Navarro. And Paul Solomon.
No.
Thank you. It does pass.
Thank you. All right, so it does pass and feedback will be provided to the applicant by CJC staff. Speaking to Judge Shanti's specific feedback, because Ken included that information in the motion about soliciting more information about how they're spending their time, I believe that is how we will be moving forward with that. Sam, I see your hand is up.
Thanks, Casey. Just a question. In the feedback, did we include more details on their eligibility standards or no?
I didn't say that specifically. I mean, I think that since we'll be soliciting information, or we will be gathering information on what's eligible, I guess I thought their standards are relatively clear, but we'll be monitoring program entry, right? And so I think that I think that that's not something to condition a grant on either. If we meet in October and we still don't feel like things are clear, then I think we could ask the county, and I would hope that they would be more than happy to provide that if there's a lack of clarity.
Okay, moving forward to the last application. We have 10 minutes remaining of this meeting, so Yamhill is up for discussion.
This is Marshall Herndon. I make a move to approve their application.
I second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second from Chief Harnden, and then seconded by DA Gunnels. It looks like we have a few folks who'd like to engage in discussion on that motion, and then hopefully we can move to a vote. Janie, I saw your hand first.
Broken record without apology. But I am sorry. The clarification, consistency, peer and navigator role. Thank you. Our TA to provide.
Thank you, Janie.
Yep.
Grant?
I have a couple things with feedback. I think that again, we're seeing the 90 days of sobriety requirement, which I think this committee has discussed in the past, that providing feedback that is not a great judge of success and really misunderstands the path to recovery that many take, and frankly will result in I believe very few successes given sort of what we've seen in drug courts here in Multnomah County. Additionally, the eligibility criteria, it just says, I think, all with substance use disorder. Just, I think, a clarification that there's no other eligibility criteria included. I would note that this sort of has that same concerning process that we've seen of need to engage within 40 days. And there's a court date in 30 days. So, I think including the feedback about reconsidering those periods to allow additional time. The final thing, that well, there was two things actually. One of the budgetary items is a DDA halftime position, and it's going to review, prepare, and present criminal cases. And so I'm not entirely sure how maybe I'm working off an old budget again, but I'm not entirely sure how that relates to deflection. Additionally, I don't fully understand why the DA's office remodel would fall into a necessary item for deflection. And same with covering the bar dues for a DDA. And so I think more information on those, or I guess a point of clarification to CJC, whether those are permitted and whether it's been spelled out how the DA's remodel will be supporting the deflection. And then finally, I didn't see any providers, which is a required element. And so I was curious what providers were involved in this discussion, as I believe that is a required collaborating partner. So some questions, some comments.
Yeah, so let me speak to the providers first. So they are partnering with their community mental health program, Yamhill County Health and Human Services, that's identified as a response to B1, as well as the local mental health authority. They just happen to be the same entity. So it is, again, Yamhill County Health and Human Services. That also looks like the same entity for their burn. So it's same entity across 3 different things.
And that's a county office. That's not a community-based office, just to clarify.
Correct. So they identified their community mental health program as Yamhill County Health and Human Services, and their local mental health authority as Yamhill County Health and Human Services, as well as their burn.
Judge Shanti?
So I think this is an interesting application. I really like that they have criteria where self-referrals and active outreach by law enforcement. That's, to me, zero intercept, right? There's nothing there. They can just do it and get services. So if that's what their intent is, I think that's lovely. I'm not quite sure about this DA2 position, because what they say is something like, I don't have the app in front of me, but my notes say related to the diversion program. And so then I'm wondering, is it all diversions? It's 50%. And, a lot of this really falls in the deflection. So again, we're back into this blur between deflection and diversion. But I'm wondering what the DA position is doing other than criminal prosecution, which that does not seem to fit the criteria. So that would be a question to find out from them. So I guess those are my comments. But overall, there's a lot to like in this application.
Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you. I would concur with what's being said. I do, as feedback for this application, I do have some concerns about the 90 days from free of illicit substances, just in terms of how that plays out for the individual. Like, how long does that mean they permanently stay in deflection if it takes them a year or two to get to recovery? Is there a cutoff point? So just clarification about how that timeline was established and their evidence-based understanding of that 90 days, if any. And then the only other feedback that I would like to provide is that the burn and the provider, it's a one shop only in terms of service provider. And I would like to see other community providers be able to participate in it, because what we know is that not every provider is right for everybody. And so just given the fact that the application, I think, is really open in terms of supporting people deflecting, the success in their treatment will really be, I think, dependent on having some choice around what provider fits best for them. So just voicing some concern about having only one in there.
Thank you, Sam. Casey, do you feel confident on the expressed feedback for the county? So we can move into.
Let me try to regurgitate some of this. So Janie offered clarification or asking for clarification on the peer navigator role and offering TA. We had, let me see, some shared feedback about that, concerns around the 90-day sobriety requirement, the concerns about engagement within 40 days, what's their evidence-based understanding of those things. Sam mentioned that she would like to see other community providers participate, which we can include as part of that feedback. And then Judge Shanti asked for clarification, deflection or diversion, especially on those budget items. What is the DA position doing to support the deflection program? Is there anything else that the GRC members would like to capture?
I just mentioned clarification around the DA's office for a model.
Right. Do we have the voting GRC members that would like to include that in as part of the feedback?
I think that's appropriate. Let's move to a voice vote, please, Casey.
All right. The decision before you now is whether or not you approve the application from Yamhill County as presented, with the feedback noted. Judge Shanti, I see your hand is raised.
I want to talk after we vote on this, before everyone hangs up. I want to do a motion, so that's why my hand's up.
Okay. So the decision before you now is whether or not you approve the Yamhill County application as presented today, noting specific feedback to be provided by CJC. Are there any abstentions from this Yamhill County decision? All right, hearing and seeing none. So all those in favor of approving the Yamhill County application, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. Okay, the application was approved and feedback will be relayed by CJC staff. So Judge Shanti, over to you.
I have a motion based on what we discussed earlier. It seems to me that a lot of the committee members would like to reconsider and discuss the Clackamas County application. So I move that we reconvene to do that, and that all the voting members be notified, and we try to do a doodle poll. That will give people a chance who voted against to be at the table, and also so that we can have a more robust and discussion. I don't think anyone at the table wanted to deny the Clackamas County application just because. I think they all had good reasons for it. I certainly thought I did. And also I've heard a lot that I'd like to reconsider. So could we do that? And I know the committee, this is going to be the fourth time we meet, but I think it would be well worth it. So if I could get a second on that, I'd love to vote on doing that.
This is Alicia. I'll second if we're able to do that. Thank you.
For the record, Judge Shanti has made a motion, seconded by Alicia Beamer, Just for the record to note that Suzanne Shanti Judge Shanti was on the prevailing side of the first vote. And so,
As was I.
as was Alicia Beamer. Thank you. I was just about to, thank you, Alicia. I see Curtis, or Sheriff Landers has his hands up. I need to stop reading the screen. Go ahead, Sheriff.
Yeah, Curtis is fine. I guess I don't know if we need to come back. We just discussed it in depth earlier. I was wondering if we could call for the vote today since we are all present.
Well, I believe the motion on the floor at the moment is to reconsider. I think we need to take that vote first. I'm not sure what people's schedules look like for continuing this meeting now, but I think we need to vote on the motion as stated, just to reconsider. And I guess technically, Judge Shanti's motion, unless the judge has some clarification, was to reconsider and to schedule another opportunity technically. So I guess that's the one we have to vote on.
That's correct, because I think it's important for the people that couldn't come today to know what's on the table, since some of them voted against and some of them voted for. So I just want the whole committee to know what we're doing and not just do it.
Thank you, Judge. Paul, go ahead.
I'm just curious about the commission's ability to start the process of making awards. Now that we've voted on all of the counties, I'm not opposed to having a discussion about Clackamas County. I just hope that that would not interfere at this point with the commission's ability, because I know we're already more than a week behind timeline in starting to get these grants out the door.
Perhaps what I would ask then from the committee is, do we have a consensus? I would hope that we would, to send notices of intent to all counties but Clackamas County, assuming that this vote to reconsider is successful. If the vote to reconsider is successful, then we could move forward with the other counties. Being that it's a formula grant, our decision on Clackamas County has no bearing on the others, at least from a financial perspective. And I see.
I would make a motion to that effect.
Well, I think we need to handle the motion on the table first.
Okay,
but that's why I was asking. I mean, to me, if we have consensus, then we may not need a motion. But I see that Sam raised her hand. I'm not sure if you wanted to disagree or have had other thoughts.
No, I actually wanted to support it and was going to ask if you were making a motion, and I would second it. But
I was trying to avoid it so we don't have the double motion. But why don't we?
Appreciate it.
It seems the committee is ready to proceed for a vote, and then perhaps we could then empower staff to, or we could vote as to whether to empower staff to notify the other counties. And so I think that we should proceed, Casey, to a roll call vote, seeing no other hands have been raised by the committee as far as the motion on the table, which is to reconsider Clackamas County's application at an individual meeting to be scheduled. I guess I don't think Judge Shanti said as soon as possible, but hopefully that's what we'll be able to do.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, we will proceed with the roll call vote. I've got a little concerns about quorum as we're over time. So Will, could you please call roll?
Absolutely. Co-Chair Sam Byers.
And just to be clear, what am I voting on? Which part? All or some?
To reconsider.
The motion from Judge Shanti was that we reconvene to reconsider the Clackamas County application and to schedule, very soon. And then Alicia Beamer was the one who seconded.
Thank you. Yes.
Co-Chair Ken Sanchagrin.
Yes.
Thank you. Judge Shanti.
Yes.
Thank you. Jeremiah Stromberg.
Yes.
Thank you. Liz Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. Steve Gunnels.
Yes.
Thank you. Eric Swallow.
Yes.
Thank you. Chief Harnden.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall. Alicia Beamer.
Yes.
Stacy Brubaker. Dr. Brigham.
Yes.
Sheriff Landers.
Yes.
Dr. Stanfield. Janie Gullickson.
Yes.
Thank you. RJ Navarro. Michelle Mason. And finally, Paul Solomon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that should pass, Casey.
Yeah, thank you. I'm confirming that we did lose a few members, but we still have quorum, and it did pass.
And then in the interest of time, before we lose quorum, I'd like to make a motion that we provide our letters of intent to all counties but Clackamas County so that they could be notified of their awards.
Second.
Second.
I'd like to call a vote on the motion, please.
I didn't catch who seconded that. I'm sorry.
I thought it was a bunch of, I think it was Chief Harnden is the one I heard.
Okay.
I think I was first in that line.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Will, let's go right into another roll call, please.
Absolutely. Co-chair Sam Byers,
Yes.
co-chair Ken Sanchagrin,
Yes.
Judge Shanti,
Yes.
Jeremiah Stromberg,
Yes.
Liz Weber,
Yes.
Steve Gunnels,
Yes.
thank you. Eric Swallow,
Yes.
thank you. Chief Harnden,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Hall, Alicia Beamer,
Yes.
thank you. Stacy Brubaker, Dr. Brigham,
Yes.
Sheriff Landers,
Yes.
Dr. Stanfill, Janie Gullickson,
Yes.
thank you. RJ Navarro, Michelle Mason, and Paul Solomon.
Yes.
Thank you. So that should pass, Casey.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate it. And thank you, Grant Review Committee members, for staying on for that. I'll be in touch with the doodle poll shortly.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, committee.